GM, I want to give you guys an emergency update because markets have been extremely volatile. You won't need me to tell you that. And there's going to be tons of misinformation out there on YouTube. There's going to be tons of people trying to appeal to your emotions, try to give you that Kool-Aid, that medicine, which is really going to be poison. When I first started trading, I was a victim of that, going on YouTube, watching a bunch of YouTubers who really just spill a bunch of crap. So let me give you guys the real deal of what we are seeing in the markets. Is this a top on Bitcoin? Yes. There's nothing to argue with that. The only follow-up question to that is, well, how long is this going to be a top for? Is it a month, or is it going to trigger the next bear market for the next 6 months, a year? That's yet to be seen. But first of all, this is a top. All the signs were there. And you've got this sweep, and then another sweep, which is a bearish signal. And especially after you lost 120K, that was the trigger for this risk off move. As I've been mentioning, guys, a breakout on Bitcoin, a markup on Bitcoin isn't going to creep up on you. Look at this breakout over here. You get a strong markup above the breakout level and it leads to continuation higher. And I can show you countless examples of this. Got this breakout over here. You get a strong markup above. You consolidate above resistance, above the breakout point, and that leads to continuation higher. That is not what we saw. Instead, we failed to break above the all-time high. Clearly couldn't close above it, couldn't mark up above it. You had big wicks going into it. It was an extremely inefficient move. There was no base that was built. There were many, many signs that this breakout wasn't going to hold. Not to mention the fact that, as I mentioned, Bitcoin dominance was red on the exact day Bitcoin tried to break out, and also Bitcoin gold was having weakness. Those were the signs I said to watch for. So it's not manipulation. A lot of people are going to tell you that. It's not because of Trump tweeting. A lot of people are going to tell you that. Yes, these things play a part. Yes, these things provide a catalyst, but Bitcoin had a false breakout of the all-time high days before any of this Trump-China news. Days before anyone was talking about the liquidations. Now everyone's talking about the liquidations. The signs were clear in the charts. I mentioned to you guys this chart over here. This shows obviously the phases we're in, high time frame. We are in that euphoria phase where things are more likely to be distribution, especially when you're in Q4. You're in those later stages of the bull market. I showed you guys this chart on Coinbase. So we had the sweep on the 4-hour chart. We had the market structure. We broke below it. This is a bearish setup, as I mentioned. And that led to continuation lower, which is what you expect. And the chart I showed today was this. Daily open over here. If we can't get above it, expect to move to the low, where you either look for a sweep or continuation lower. And that is what has played out here, obviously very violently. If you check my updates over here, so I said below the daily open, we're at risk of hitting the low again, or at risk of another sweep, or breaking down further. We, of course, broke down further. We then tried to rally this morning, couldn't close above the daily open on the H1, and that, of course, led to this move over here. And you see the stock market had its first shift. So I mentioned to you guys in the morning video, watch which way this breaks on the S&P 500, and that's now led to, of course, this down move. Check something like the stock market. You're seeing all of those narratives around AI. That over exuberance that I was mentioning is now coming to light, where we broke down from this green box. So I'll actually grab this chart over here to show it. This was a chart from this morning's video. Broke down. Obviously, stock market's closed now, so the brunt of this move gets hit on crypto. Now that only crypto markets are open, so that's why you see all the volatility in crypto. Interesting to see where this opens on Monday. Does it gap down? But you had that clear risk off move when we broke down from this box. So that, of course, is not bullish. That, of course, does raise caution. You're seeing the signs of the risk off signals that I've been mentioning this week. And now you've got to just look at the charts, as I said, for what it is. This is a top. How long it's going to be a top for, I don't know. But the fact that we've had a big liquidation is every sign you need. Let's look at some charts. Let's look at what Bitcoin has done in previous cycles. So let's get Bitcoin USD up to the daily. Let's take a look at last cycle because we're seeing similar signs here. So this cycle we've had sweep after sweep and false breakout. Last cycle we had sweep after sweep, false breakout. You then had a flush down. We've had that flush down. So by all means, you can have some bounces like we had here. If bullish, we're going to reclaim this high over here. I think it's unlikely, of course, since smart money have used the liquidity as distribution rather than saving the liquidity, allowing it to build up for a proper breakout. Therefore, it's more akin to something like this since we've seen the big liquidation. You then can potentially see continuation lower. That's what I'd be on the lookout for from here. Obviously, you've got a big liquidation day. You're going to have everyone scrambling, long, short, long, short, long, short. So I expect things can get volatile. And it doesn't have to go straight down in a line. As I said, you can have a bounce up like this. But overall, was this the cycle top? Yes, it was. Although, did that mean we couldn't come back to those highs for another test? No, because of course, we came back later in 2021. And now the reason for that, of course, is because this topping pattern happened much earlier. This was during March, during Q1, Q2, whereas this topping pattern was in Q4. So obviously Q4 last year of the 4-year cycle is typically when you expect a bull market to end. And that's what further allowed you to get that move back up to the highs here. But again, what is this? It's a sweep, false breakout. So once you have the false breakout, that's when you have to have caution. And then you have your levels. 120K was the level that Bitcoin had to hold to stay bullish, lost it. And it's similar to this. 60K was the level back then to hold. And we lost it. So then you just simply get out and wait. You can always get back in if price gives you the signal. That's fine. It's not about having to call the top. It's about managing your risk, managing your portfolio. Of course, you guys know I've been 100% cash since 121K over here. This was when I sold all my Bitcoin because I was seeing those early distribution signs. When we broke down, we then started sweeping liquidity instead of leaving it. So that was a trigger for me to exit. And again, we've just had a prolonged extended move of that where we've gone for another sweep. So you want to avoid being in the markets during any of this potential downside because we can get back in if we close back above 125K. We can always get back in. And sure, there's going to be great trading in here. There's going to be volatile price action for the next few days, the next few weeks. It's going to be great fun. You can trade both long and short as a trader. That's why learning the skill of trading is so important in the markets, not only because your fiat gets debased endlessly by the central banks, but because you can trade short and long, so you can bet against the market going down and up. So it doesn't matter. You don't need a bull market to make money as a trader. And really, it's just about saving your portfolio for this because I was around back during this cycle. I remember we hit 50K and everyone was saying it's still fine. Bitcoin's okay. It's not the top. We're going to bounce. And I remember we hit 40K. People were saying the same thing. 40K is rock solid support, guys. Look at this. It's previous support. We're going to bounce from here. And then, of course, we broke 40K, and people then still said, 30K, guys, this has been the cycle support. We are going to hold here. Don't worry. And then, of course, we broke 30K, and that led to the proper capitulation down below 20K, where people really did check out. So it's like, you don't want to be that guy who's just constantly bidding, 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 bidding. Now, don't get me wrong, if you have a high time frame, 10-year view of Bitcoin, yes, DCAing every week, every month is a great strategy. And the key point is you've got a strategy, you've got a system. That's why that's okay. But just buying blindly, especially with leverage, as we've seen, is not what you want to do. And if you have got over leverage today, if you have lost more than you wanted to lose, that's okay. You just have to move on now and get over it. It's done now. You're not going to want to revenge trade, chase back your losses, because that can lead to a negative spiral, which gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So, if you take one advice from me, if you have lost more than you wanted to lose today, just know that revenge trading is outcome driven. It's focusing on the money. It's telling the market what to do. It's demanding money from the market, and that's never going to work. It always ends in tears. Take it as a lesson to build processes, build systems so that you can actually know what to do in the markets because you have data to prove a system is profitable, and you have data to prove that a system may be unprofitable and therefore not to use it. You can't now just become a 1 minute trader or a 5 minute scalper to try and make back money because you're going against your processes. It is akin to gambling, and it's going to end up for the worse. So, quick piece of advice there for anyone out there. I know many will have, of course, been liquidated and blown up more than you wanted to, and that's fine. Because if you now can take that as a lesson, the only way is up from there. If you don't take it as a lesson and you continue revenge trading, well, you're just going to keep spiraling. You can't expect a different outcome by repeating the same thing over and over. If you want a different outcome, then you have to change as a trader. You have to be the guy who creates a system, who backtests that system with 100 trades before taking it live in the market. And then when they take it live, you do it with $1 risk, then move up to $10, then $100, then slowly scale to your portfolio risk size. That is trading. Might sound boring, might sound robotic, but making money is not meant to be fun, guys. And that is my honest best advice for any of you out there who are hurting during this. But back to the markets, as I said, you really are now just looking at a potential high time frame top. You get these big liquidation days that often come around these local tops. So it doesn't mean all doom and gloom. I mean, if we get lower prices, cheaper Bitcoin, I welcome it. Like, where could we go if we do have further downside? Let's look. We have the 50-week EMA, which has held as support all cycle. That's been your high time frame bull market support. So technically, dipping into there could be your final bull market support and actually keep everything intact. And this, of course, will keep rising. At the moment, it's around 99K. Of course, we also have some other EMA bands on the weekly. We've got the 100, which is sitting at 83K, hasn't been tested this cycle. Potentially that's an area. I don't think the 200 should get hit anytime soon, especially at 65K, but this is when you just open up your high time frame plan. You don't want to be scared of a top because who cares? Market's top and bottom, guys. We know it. So if you know market's top and bottom, what's the point in being scared of a top? It's literally retarded when you put it like that. We know market's top and bottom. So why would you be scared of a top? Is that going to be productive for you, or is that going to be counterproductive for you making money? Of course, counterproductive, because you want to be objective. You want to be open to all scenarios and have a plan for all scenarios. Again, if we reclaim the highs, boom, we can continue higher. Bull market's back on. But otherwise, now just got to be patient and see where can we find some actual high time frame support? And I'll be breaking this down in the weekly outlook on Sunday night. Very late right now where I am. Should be sleeping, but I wanted to get this update for you guys. So if you have enjoyed this, if this has helped you a bit, make sure you subscribe, like, drop a comment on this video. But these would be the bands I'd be looking at on the weekly. Of course, monthly candle, we now have retraced all of October's gains with a sweep of the highs, as I mentioned. So this is a very bearish monthly candle as it stands. It's a failed attempt. And if you go back to my monthly outlook, or was it weekly outlook video, where I have all of the distributions up on Bitcoin, I'm not sure which chart it is. Potentially it is on this one. Let's have a look at this. It's not this one, but this is your high time frame Bitcoin charts. We can see we failed to break above the support resistance level that we need to. We're now coming back into the high time frame support level. That's what the wicks come to, which has been your high time frame support. But the chart I really wanted to show you guys was this one, if you remember, the distribution ranges on Bitcoin. So this is a distribution. This was a distribution over here, which then turned into accumulation because we managed to flip it into support. So we now go back to my monthly outlook video for October. If you haven't seen it, make sure to check it out because this is now starting to become important. We tried to close in this distribution zone, we have, but now we've immediately rejected it the following week. We've come back to the previous accumulation zone, but now we're testing it again, and again. And if we lose this zone, that's when it opens up for some of these lower bands to get hit. And if you guys remember, once the summer low gets taken in a bull market, especially in that final year, that signals the bear market. If you look at the summer low last cycle in the final year, it was at 28K. This was your 2021 summer low. It held, never got retested, leading to the rally. But as soon as it got hit, that led to, of course, your capitulation in the bear market. And you look at all of these years. Your summer low in 2020 was over here, never got hit in the bull market. Your summer low in 2023 never got hit in the bull market. Summer low in 2024 never got hit in the bull market. So now you're looking at this low. Are we going to change character, which would equal hitting this low? Or are we actually going to continue consolidating? Of course, I'd bet on this summer low now getting hit, barring a breakout above this distribution zone, above 125K. And also something interesting is the September low. So the September low over here never got hit in 2024. Never got hit in 2023. We ignore 2022 because that was a bear market. And once it got hit in 2021 cycle, again, that was a trigger for a bear market. So that is one of the bad signals that we've seen. The September low has got wicked, of course, which does urge caution, of course, for lower. So if we do go lower, it's fine. Again, cheap Bitcoin. I'm going to be loading the boats. These are your generational buys. You've got to remember, everyone who bought during the bear market phase around 15 to 25K, even up to 30, even 45K, the goal of those buyers is to sell somewhere near the cycle top. They are the sellers who have been showing up here. It's the smart money. I was around in 2022, 2023, 2024 accumulating, and many others were around. That's the game. You've got to realize profit. There's no crime in realizing profit. But that's where all the opportunity is. Only if you survive the euphoria phase. Only if you don't get over leveraged, blow up on days like today by not having risk management, by not having a system and revenge trading after you got liquidated. Only smart money and only very few traders are around during these periods, 2022, even 2023. And that's why it offers the most opportunity, because it's just PvP, smart money against smart money against smart money. And eventually, bull market gets exciting, retail come back, and that generates the exit liquidity. The exit liquidity. You then start to see sweeps. You start to see sweeps instead of the lovely breakouts. This isn't a sweep, is it? This is a clean breakout. And what is this? Again, clean breakout. Again, clean breakout. You guys get the point. You're seeing changes of character in the cycle over and over. There are many signs. And that's why we go back to our support zones. What are we looking at? So we've got some bands on the weekly, 50, 100, and 200. And if we go to the monthly and put on the 12 and 21 bands, these have also been a bull market support, which are currently sitting at 86 to 100K. So interesting levels in between 100K and let's say 80K. That can get filled in the coming weeks if this is going to confirm its distribution. But again, more on that in the weekly outlook on Sunday night. I'll be diving into a full high time frame update. Make sure you tune in for that. Looking at the liquidation closer, so Coinbase went to 106K, whereas if we look at something like Bybit, went to, let's remove this. Bybit went to 101K. So you see the lower half of this move between 106 and 101K was driven by liquidations. It was driven by leverage because on Coinbase, this of course only went to 107, whereas Bybit went all the way down to 101. So there's a large portion of this dump that is purely liquidation led over here. That's where longs just got absolutely wiped out. And that can lead to, as you see, bounces like now. Great trading, great volatility because everyone's got wrecked in this zone, which leads to the market flushing up, making them FOMO back in, making them make emotional decisions because they got wrecked here. Now they're seeing it pump. They're like, oh my God, do I need to get back in? And that's what then leads to chop, and then a retest eventually. You can go higher. Of course, I think eventually you retest it and go lower. But really, you need to let today play out. Check back in this weekend, check back in Monday, watch some of the closes because it's obviously a huge liquidation on futures. No surprise to see bounces here, but that is a show of weakness. That is liquidity wiped from everything since July, which is absolutely insane. Even some of June over here. And that's going to take a while for Bitcoin to digest. That's going to lead to traders flip-flopping, and I bet the overall direction most likely is a breakdown further. Now, don't get me wrong. If smart money have the chance, are they going to pump this up back to the highs? Yes, they are, because this is the perfect area to get more exit liquidity. But you have had a show of weakness now here, which you just can't ignore. You just simply cannot ignore, and we now have to wait. So that's a little update on Bitcoin. If we look at Ethereum, of course, had the same levels mapped out. We lost them. We all know what happened. You look at something like this chart over here. We teared through the support zone. So mentioned this morning, We're in a downtrend. Until you see a low time frame reversal, expect it to go lower. This is why you don't buy until you see that sign of a double bottom, a sweep, or a failure to return, because it's in a downtrend. We don't buy downtrends. And well, since then we've lost the high time frame support resistance level, so very bad. That is your primary support and the level that ETH really didn't want to lose. So you're looking at this chart now and saying, again, is this a top? It's definitely a high time frame false breakout, especially if we close the weekly below this high time frame support resistance here, because you had a failed attempt to break up and now you're closing back inside. Again, it's not the time, not the day to be making crazy decisions here, because this is a real show of weakness in the charts. So when we look at Solana, this has, I know, gone below its yearly open briefly. We're getting back above it now, but again, from here, you've broken down from the compression that we was forming. You're potentially losing the weekly market structure, and below the yearly open was very bad. And as I said, all of these liquidity targets were vulnerable when you lost that yearly open, which we've taken now. And problem is, you've taken so many longs out the game, you've taken so much money out the markets that these wicks tend to get filled back in, because you've just wiped out all of the limit orders, all of the passive bid to $147. Yes, we can bounce. Yes, we can rally, but it's hard for that to just immediately go back, bull markets on, and produce new highs when you've taken out so much demand and you've wrecked so many longs, so many positions, so much money lost. It's like that doesn't actually catalyze a move higher. That's actually more of a bearish liquidation, which can lead to chop bounces, but eventually it urges caution. And of course, you know that on all coins, they're going to be weaker than Bitcoin, and that's why we go back to BTC. This is a chart we're going to have a main focus on, and that we've got to watch, and we've got to see what is going to be going on now with the weekly close and the coming weeks on Bitcoin. And I'll get, again, that full high time frame view up tomorrow. Bitcoin dominance, of course, had a huge spike. We're seeing people long altcoins now again, which is why this is actually falling. So yeah, going to be an interesting few days coming ahead. Hope you guys enjoyed that quick update. Just wanted to give you guys something while we're seeing this craze in the markets. No need to panic. Be a professional. Days like today are going to be one of 100 days that you experience in the markets if you are going to be a professional trader. So get used to it. It's really not even that big of a move when you look back at the 2021 moves we used to have. This was crazy. So it's actually quite insane to see just how many people are getting wrecked for Bitcoin just going back to the low of this range and wicking it. Absolutely crazy, and a good thing really, the fact that people were getting wrecked from much higher levels. That's definitely a great sign to see. As I mentioned, I don't think we see bear markets like this anymore, 2022. And I think this is the main reason people are so scared of, is this a top? Is this a top? Because they think just 2022 fractal is just going to repeat exactly. They think, yeah, I'm just going to get this. Bitcoin's over, and now we're just going to see literally this. And they just input their fractal going to zero. It's not going to look like that. No bear market's going to look the same. Just like no bull market looks the same. We've been much more sustainable this cycle. It's been consolidate up, consolidation up, consolidation up, consolidation, whereas last cycle was just parabolic up. The quicker you go up, the quicker you fall. This has been a slow grind up with accumulation, smart money, institutions coming in. Yes, you can still have bear markets, but it's not going to play out the same. Good to see on a positive that retail are getting wrecked, obliterated on a candle that's not really even moved all that much. From high to low, 15%. It's absolutely wild. The reactions to this, of course, don't get me wrong, it is because all coins are going much lower. But it just goes to show how Bitcoin is king, has been king all cycle, and the fact that leverage is being reset at much higher levels means that I do think, in the bear market, maybe the 50-week or maybe the 100-week EMA can actually be the support if we do go into one, and that's going to offer your generational buys. That's the buys that can change your life, the buys you want to be here for, and where 90% of your bull market gains are made. So shouldn't be scared of it if it is going to come. Otherwise, play it level by level, stay objective. If you need to go build a system, you need to rethink your trading, go do that today, but move on from any losses that you have taken. I'll see you guys in the next one.